Good afternoon, everyone. I'll let you know these lights are pretty bright, so please keep your hand gestures pointing at me in a polite manner. And thank you for joining after, I'm sure, a wonderful lunch and a long, full week of announcements here at reInvent. My name is Clark Rogers, and I am an enterprise strategist here at AWS. And the slide will advance. But that's not important. Enterprise strategy team, we are former customers, all operating in the C-suite. I'm a former CISO or recovering CISO, depending on how you want to look at it. And I come from the insurance and financial services space, where I led a business unit all into AWS, actually for security reasons. My team as a whole are former CTOs and CIOs, and we spend the majority of our time, or specifically I spend the majority of my time, in two distinct areas. The first one being all things digital transformation, right? So people, process, organizational change, making sure that technology investments align with business outcomes, that type of thing. And then the other half of my conversations are security, risk, compliance, and privacy related. And as you can imagine, I often am talking to two different groups at these particular customers, and unfortunately, more often than not, I'm introducing one to another, and they both work for the same company. So the talk today is really about what I have seen over my last 6 years here at AWS and interactions with over 650 customers when it comes to security. And what I've been able to find is the companies that are investing in security best practices, security engineering, strong security culture are the ones who are outperforming their peers in the same industry. They take security seriously, they embed it early in processes, and it is universally everyone's job within the organization. Why does it matter? Well, when we think about why we're all here, and actually I can kind of see the amount of people in here. Show of hands, who would define themselves as a security professional? Okay. Infrastructure operations types. Developers. And who's left? There's no lawyers in here, are there? No? Okay, good. So why does it matter? It's because all of us, the security professionals, the infrastructure professionals, the development professionals, the reason we're working for the company is to make them successful, whether that's financial or however they're deciding to serve their customers. And we all have to have the same goal. And if our goal is to delight our customers, like it is at AWS, which I'm sure it's at your organizations as well, it's focusing on what is best for them, and having a secure outcome is best for them, in my opinion. So when we think about FICO, the credit score people, right? So they have their decision management suite that runs on top of AWS. And prior to AWS and prior to adapting DevOps models and agile practices, they were able to release once every 5 weeks or so. They've adopted the practices, digital transformation, security in mind. Now they're releasing once a day or practically whenever they want to do so. Fannie Mae. For those of you not from the United States, Fannie Mae basically backs all of the mortgages here in the United States. And they have to be able to have a very resilient system that resides on AWS to react to the very turbulent housing market. For those of us who have been looking to buy a home in the last few months, it's quite a challenge with availability and, of course, those lovely interest rates. Philips. Their healthcare management suite takes in data from IoT systems, medical imaging systems, other medical devices, as well as they take in a lot of PHI from their customers. And they have to earn customer trust with everything they do and the platforms that they run. Southwest Airlines. Operations, keeping planes in the sky, keeping them maintained, making sure that they can scale operations during holiday rushes and then the downtimes, such as a pandemic. And of course, AWS. As you've seen, starting Tuesday of this week, and actually maybe Monday, we release a lot of features and services for you all to consume. It's a high pace of innovation, and we do it to delight you and give you the tools that you need to innovate on top of our platform for your businesses. At no point did I mention security in any of those things. These are all business outcomes that each one of these organizations care about and they're trying to achieve, but not a single one of them could do this without a strong security program and strong security culture. When I was putting this deck together, I had the opportunity to go through a lot of customer references that I could pick, and there were so many to choose from, and I'm very happy to say there were so many to choose from because of the importance of security that customers put on top of this. One that's not listed here, but it's a favorite of mine, is Goldman Sachs. They built out their security to the point that they feel comfortable enough in the cloud to launch a bank on AWS. Pretty cool. Again, security enabled the business to do this, and security de-risked the opportunity to allow the business to execute. So I thought I'd take a step back first before we get into the sort of the how-tos of the talk, to talk about how we got here. So back in the 80s, for those of you who can remember the 80s, I can, we had ransomware back then. It was delivered on a floppy disk in a parking lot. Hey, what's that? First of all, does everybody know what a floppy disk is? 3.5 inches of plastic, some magnets, holds a whopping 1.44 meg, I believe. You can do some voodoo to it and make it a little bit more. But either way, that was the delivery mechanism. So if you see the floppy disk on the floor and you go, oh, cool, an extra floppy disk, because they were expensive, throw it in your computer and oops, right? So ransomware is not new. Also, back in the 80s and even closer to now, computer science was evolving, but not everybody had a computer in their home. In fact, that was a rarity for the most part. But now every single one of you has enough power in the laptop you have and potentially in the phone that you carry to do some pretty devastating things from a computer perspective, from an attack perspective, and then from a defense perspective. So when we think about code in general, we have humans writing code. Humans are not perfect, so humans are going to make mistakes. Therefore, there's going to be vulnerability in code, and some people want to exploit that. And as we see over time here, there's many people trying to do that. And unfortunately, not a day goes by where you can't pick up the paper, that dated me, look on the internet, and read a story about somebody being compromised or an attack happening. Anybody attend our security conference, Reinforce? 1, 2, 3, a couple. So at his keynote at the security conference, CJ Moses, our CISO, said this, and I think he's being kind. He happens to be a race car driver, so he likes putting things in miles per hour all the time. But the idea is things are moving so fast. The computing capabilities are available to everyone, both good and bad, or those with good and bad intentions. And the tools are available for people to execute bad actions. Speaking of the tools, again, we go back to the 80s. DDoS attacks were measured in megabytes, or megabits, excuse me. Today, we're measuring them in terabits, right? 10 years ago or so, you need to have a lot of skill to get on your machine and go give somebody a hard time on their infrastructure. Today, I can take your stolen credit card, go onto the dark web, and there's ransomware as a service. And these criminals are very, very professional. Their services are as robust as some of the legal software as a service that you'll see out today. They have fantastic customer service, right? For those of you who aren't familiar with Brian Krebs, I think it's Krebs on Security is his website. He investigates a lot of these, and you'll see a lot of screenshots of some of the software. It is very sophisticated and user-friendly, and quite frankly, there's a lot of legal commercial entities that could take some tips from them, right? But the thing is, you just have to have a bad intent now. You don't have to have the skill set. So you can go in there, fire up an attack, and give somebody a very hard time. I spoke with the CEO a couple weeks ago now, in the manufacturing space. And he goes, I get the importance of security, but no one's going to come after me. I'm a small manufacturer. I've got a little bit of software. My revenue is only so much. Who's going to come after me? And I had to explain to him, it's not personal, or it's not necessarily personal, right? If I'm a bad actor and I've signed up to one of these wonderful ransomware as a service offerings, it costs me nothing to put in your IP address and see what's going on there, or put in a ton of them and see what bounces back. And then if something looks interesting to me, I can go explore it a little further. Then he started to get that, the importance of security all the way around. No eggs were harmed. Actually, a lot of eggs were harmed in this picture. But the idea is things are really getting messy. So we have the defenders with a lot of capability. We have the attackers also with a lot of capability. So the one thing that's going to separate the two is not only am I going to make smart security decisions and build out an infrastructure that's going to help me, but I'm also going to have a strong security culture that's going to make it everyone's job within the organization to think this way. Another pro tip here. Is anyone familiar with this book? This is How They Tell Me the World Ends. I'm shocked. All of you go by this book. I don't know the author. This book sets the stage of why we are where we are today. And the shortcut of that is basically the intelligence communities created the market that we're living in now, that people can profit from vulnerabilities and exploits and sell them on the black market, et cetera. I have shared this book with colleagues, so security professional colleagues. I've shared it with CEOs, boards of directors. Basically, get this book in front of your management team and have them read it with the disclaimer, don't read it right before bed because it's horrific, right? And they'll get an understanding of what we're facing these days. So hopefully your CEO won't be the one that says, hey, no one's out to get me, right? If you haven't grabbed the link yet, you can. These slides will be available online in a couple weeks or so. So what does shipping securely actually look like? Well, it could be one of two things. On one hand, it could be, and I'm speaking on behalf of the customer here, well, we try to ship as securely as possible, as often as possible. Not bad. Or the other answer is, we build security into everything we do, and we run securely. It's a slight nuance, but it's different. The first one, as many of you may have experienced over your careers, I know I have, hey, we're going to put this into production tomorrow. Did anybody remember to run a security scan on it? Nope. So then either your security team or somebody who's been entrusted to do so is running a scan, doing some other checks that they need to do, and then the reports more often than not come around looking like a Christmas tree. Hint, red, bad, not enough green, right? So then it's a heroic effort to try to get this product out the door, and someone has to make the decision, do we release it with all these vulnerabilities or not? Yes or no? And then you may have a problem later on down the line. Versus, we promised we'd get these features out the door to this customer, same launch day, right? We found a security vulnerability throughout the life cycle, because we've been scanning throughout the life cycle, then it's a business decision. Do we push the release out a couple weeks or a couple sprints and get the security fix in? The answer should be yes. But again, it's a business decision, it's a risk decision. And then do we add that security fix into the backlog, or do we add the feature into the backlog? You want to be in that position to have that conversation. So these next couple slides, I'm going to talk about kind of what I see across organizations. So this first slide is going to be specific to an organization as a whole. And the next slide will be based on security teams specifically. So there's sort of three tiers that I see, and again, we're going from least progressive to most progressive here. And many organizations may have blends of these, so these are not absolutes, but again, this is what I see. So we start off with security organizations as a whole that are aware of security, right? So they have some network-based controls in place. Humans have direct access to data, right? So they log into a portal, I can pull this file, I can pull that file. When something goes wrong, you have questions like, what happened? Didn't think that was going to occur. I thought we had a service that stopped us from doing that. Culturally, security is the security team's job. That team that is often down in the basement without any windows, right? Let's go call those folks. They're going to go fix whatever this is, whether it's my application, whether it's the infrastructure, whatever it may be. They're often reactive in nature. Let's wait till something bad happens before we actually think about fixing it or putting in some programmatic controls. We'd love for you to get some security training, but we also need you to keep the lights on all day. So feel free to take training. We may or may not reimburse you, but you're going to have to do it on your own time. And then the operations folks, the developers not so much, but the operations folks, the security teams, they're operating in sort of a point-and-click console environment, right? They're operating security tools or infrastructure tools that they bought thinking it's going to check the box across everything they need to do, and they're operating in that world. As we move up the stack, we have organizations that I call sort of bolted on, right? So they've improved a little bit. They realize that maybe they're doing some threat modeling, and they understand other bad things can happen other than just network-based attacks. So they're thinking about identity-based controls. They start building systems to interact with data and then giving humans access to those systems in order for humans to actually do their jobs. So they're putting another layer between potential bad actors who have compromised a login account to ideally a much more secure system-based account to access data. Something bad happens. It's no longer it's what, it's why. So let's delve a little bit further. What system failed or what process failed in our either development pipeline or security practices, whatever it may be. Now they're monitoring, and they're taking measures based on some monitoring and some logging that they're seeing, as well as reacting to bad things. Responsibility for security expands here, right? It's no longer just the security team that's involved. It's possibly a product owner or maybe even a business owner that's responsible for security for their particular stack, which is a huge change culturally because the business owner typically owns the P&L. So now security is equated to dollars and cents versus bits and bytes and viruses and patching and all that kind of stuff. Security talent is typically hired into the security team. So now we want that person or that team made up of security certified professionals, whether it's a CISSP or SAN certification, whatever the case may be. I want to get that person in here who understands this and can actually do these kinds of things. And then we start to see the transition to more of an engineering mindset. This also happens to coincide with customers who are moving to the cloud. Right? When you think about, I'm using something like AWS Guard Duty. I'm getting all the threat intel that I need or that I care about for my business. I can make a declarative statement that, hey, for my business, I sell toys. There's no reason there should be any Bitcoin mining in my operation, right? Guard duty says, hey, you've got a couple compromised instances over here that are running Bitcoin. Uh-oh, what would you like to do? So human can actually go take a look at that. Or just based on the alert alone, you can fire off a Lambda job to shut those down and bring up clean ones. That's pretty cool. It's a basic example, but that's the kind of thing that gets security teams thinking a little bit differently. Like engineering might be the way to go, because as a security professional, is that the best use of my time to go do that sort of thing, hunt down machines? Probably not. We have computers and infrastructure that can do that. Maybe my time is best spent thinking about evaluating risk for the organization. And finally, we have security embedded throughout the organization, right? I use zero trust as an example. Just think of the more advanced architectures that you might have out there. But thinking about identity, risk to systems, how long do they need to be up and running? Maybe you're using a lot of Lambda and serverless, right? From a technical perspective. Humans have no direct access to data. There's no way to to compromise Clark's identity. Well, you may be able to compromise Clark's identity. But that wouldn't have an effect on the actual system itself, right? If someone stole my passwords, for example. When we look into problem sets, we've evolved. How can we be sure this does not happen again, right? So that's an ownership statement. Something went bump in the night, we figured out what it was. How do we make sure it doesn't happen again? It's going on someone's backlog. Ideally, it's someone as close to the problem as possible, so maybe somebody in the product team, or it could be somebody in security that owns it, but somebody owns it. Security is no longer just the security team's job or the product owner's job, but it's everyone's job. I call it from the mailroom to the boardroom. Everyone in your organization has a responsibility for security in this model. I'm not saying that that's the case with you guys. We're being proactive. We're doing a lot of threat modeling, not just to the systems we have, but based on the industry that we're in. We're joining things like the different ISAC programs that are out there, right? So birds of a feather organizations where you're meeting with other financial services professionals, for example. What kind of attacks are you seeing? I'm seeing these kind of attacks, right? So we're learning from each other and we're being proactive on the kinds of systems and security that we're building. Security knowledge is no longer kept in the basement. It's in the real world with the product teams, it's with the infrastructure teams, it's with business teams, it's with HR, right? Everybody has a certain understanding. Everybody's getting a minimum amount of security training. I know everybody loves their annual security awareness training. That's the floor. But each organization or each business unit within your organization can have specialized security training based on what they do. And then we see a real move to automated tooling. Because again, computers are really good at the ones and zeros and the yeses and the nos, and people are really good at evaluating risk for the most part. So why not push as much as you can to the systems that can evaluate conditions and states, address it accordingly with automation, and let your people focus on actual risk to the business. So that's the organizational view. And now I'd like to move to actual security team view, right? So we're all familiar with the crawl, walk, run, sprint modes, and that's what we're going to go through here. So we have this cute little baby. As an infant, that security team is reacting, right? They're firefighters looking for smoke. Whack-a-mole security, right? After a while, that's going to get exhausting, and you're not really adding any value to the business. It's just something goes bad, that's the team to go fix it. As you mature, these security teams realize these kind of things continue to happen to us. Maybe we need to build some security architectures to help prevent it for the most part. Maybe we're going to put in certain firewall architecture. Maybe we're going to do some network segmentation so we reduce blast radius of security events or potential security events. The next level, actually let me back up. While we're on protects, this is also where security teams tend to find things like standards to align to. You might be surprised with the customer conversations that I have. Clearly, if I'm talking to a financial services company or a healthcare company, they're aligning to all sorts of standards and regulations that they can point back to why they're doing what they're doing from a security perspective. But I meet with a lot of companies that don't have any standard to align to. And I said, none? No, we take a little bit of this, a little bit of that. It seems to make sense. We should probably know what our inventory of assets are. We should probably patch things. That seems to sound like a good thing to do, right? So I encourage them, it doesn't have to be sexy. Pick the CIS top 20 if you need to. It's a nice orderly way of looking at your security program and align to that. Because later on, and we'll get to this in a couple of clicks, later on, you're going to be at the point where you need to explain your security decisions to senior management. And if you start explaining things like, well, this bit and that byte and this virus and this patch cycle and this CVE, they're going to sit there and look at you like you're crazy. You need to be able to tie it back to either a regulation or a standard as to why you're doing all these things and then how it affects the actual business that you're working in. So as we start to run, this is the real exciting time. This is when security can actually help your business differentiate itself among its competitors in its industry. Personal example here, I was working for a reinsurance company. It's just what it sounds like. You insure insurance companies. And we had an automated system and many other reinsurance companies had something similar to this, that basically could make an automated underwriting decision on behalf of life insurance applications that were submitted to us. At the time, we were not in the cloud, and we didn't have any security certifications for it. So the sellers that we were going to say, hey, buy our service, they were large insurance companies with very established security programs. And they're like, this is great, but how do I know the security of your systems? I'm not going to sign this contract, even though I really want to use your product, without some assurances of what your security program looks like. This was a business problem. This was not a security problem. So I worked with the C-suite and the board of directors and got the approval. Not only did we move this entire business into AWS, but then we also achieved a SOC 2 Type 2 certification for this entire business. Now, when we went to those sellers and said, hey, you want to buy our software, what's your security like? Have a read. Let me know what you think. The onboarding time went from 6 months to a couple weeks because people accepted that SOC 2 Type 2 as gold. This is proving the effectiveness of your controls over a period of time. Security solution to a business problem, right? That's what you get here when security is actual differentiator for you. Our competitors did not, so we got a huge leap on them, right? Side note, any APN partners in here? Nope. So when I talk to some of our partners who want to sell on the AWS marketplace, right? They have all sorts of software solutions, et cetera. And I say, well, who are you targeting? Who's the buyer of your software? Oh, banks, financial services institution, healthcare, all this kind of thing. And I said, well, if you really want to stand out, you probably want to get the AWS security competency for your software, because that's a checkbox toggle in the marketplace. Do you have it or do you not have it? And I said, I will virtually guarantee you that these large companies with robust security programs are checking that box before they hit search. If they check that box, you don't even get a chance, right? So again, security is a business imperative in that case as well. And lastly, we have security enabling the business, right? This is where security is integrated throughout the business. So not only the security badged people, maybe they've moved up from the basement now and have a window view, right? Not only those folks, but developers, infrastructure teams, business leaders, the CEO, the board, all understand security, understand its value to the overall business, and they look at it as a de-risker for the organization. I really look at security teams. Your job and security as a whole is not to build and install all the firewalls that you want to do and put all these cool security tools in there. Your job is to de-risk the business and allow the business to move faster. Allow that business to take risks, move into new markets, try new products, try to go after new customers. That's your job. You just happen to do security tooling to help them with that. But the problem is, while that is all fairly simple to sort of go through in those slides, a lot of customers struggle with doing this. And I think one of the biggest reasons is as follows here. For the most part, customers think about security in that security department deep down in the basement, right? That it's hard to staff for, it's hard to hire for, and how am I going to justify building out such an expensive security team? So the best way to counter that is, again, to put security throughout the organization. So how do we start? Here's some ideas. I heard a couple laughs, so I know I got through to some people. So this is clearly tongue-in-cheek here. However, they're not all bad ideas. But the idea is you can't just proclaim a lot of these things. You actually have to set up a plan and actually execute it to be real, right? Security is in our DNA is a great t-shirt, but you actually have to do something with it, right? So it shouldn't be a surprise at Amazon, we talk about culture a lot, and we have really 4 pillars to really go through here. Culture, so it's setting the beliefs and values of the organization in regards to security and what your ultimate goal is. Organization, how do you structure your organization to take advantage of that culture and support it? Mechanisms, again, you want to enforce the culture, you want to enforce the organizational changes you've made to ensuring that in your organization, the people that can solve the problems and make the decisions around security are as close to the problem as possible. Ideally, they're on that development team, and they can solve the problem for you. And then none of that matters if you can't actually execute, right? So you have to set up the processes that you can actually execute on this vision. So let's start with culture. But first, let's start with a sip of delicious Mountain Dew, or Red Bull. So, AWS security, and I'll be using AWS examples, but this also aligns with a lot of the customers that have implemented similar practices. We are a no-blame security culture. If you think there's a problem, there's a problem. You open up a ticket, you call somebody, you send an email. We have many different ways you can do it inside of AWS. We want to hear about it. The difference is, in many organizations, if you let somebody know a security problem, and it's not one, you might get in trouble. You wasted my time. I ran down what you thought was a security problem, and you're a big dummy, and there wasn't one, right? At AWS, you open up that ticket. If it turns out to be nothing, you get a big thank you, and your manager gets a thank you. But if it turns out to be something, guess what? You also get a thank you, and your manager gets a thank you, right? So this is reinforcing behavior that you want to see from people. You want people raising their hands when they see something that's a little bit off, whether it's a funny-looking email or something in their line of code that they're working on that doesn't seem to look right. Also, from a cultural perspective, is the mindset that we look for not only in our security engineering teams and security teams, but actual development teams as well. How do I break something? Right? It's that curiosity. How do I break something, then how do I fix it, and then how do I make sure that nobody else can break it? That's pretty cool when you think about that. That QR code, because you all are concerned about security and that's not going to take you somewhere bad, is a link to a YouTube video that I conducted with Eric Brandwine on this very subject. It's about 15 minutes long, and there's a part 2 as well. And he talks a lot about how we do things and how we think about security engineering at AWS. So I would encourage you to take a look at that when you can. And just remember to like and subscribe. So the importance of security, right? When we talk about the culture specifically, and our friends at Gartner here says the same thing, that in order to take full advantage of implementing security at your organization, you have to have the social aspects of it. You have to build that security culture. And by 2025, they think it's going to increase. 5% sounds about right based on what I see with customers today. So when we think about engagement, right, and the way these next few slides are going to work is kind of the old school way and then the desired way, right? So when we think about executive sponsorship, we always talk about in the digital transformation and cloud adoption realm, you got to have executive sponsorship to be successful, and that's true. But when we think about security, we want to have executive engagement. The CEO needs to be curious about security within the organization. An example we have at AWS is there's a weekly 1-hour meeting between the CEO and the CISO. Adam Selipsky's a busy guy. He's got 200 and some odd services to worry about, expanding into different countries, all this kind of thing. Yet he takes the time for an hour with the CISO every week. What they talk about, who knows? Just joking. But the idea is that sets the tone for the rest of the organization. If it's that important to Adam, and I'm a VP of some service, guess what? It better be that important to me. Security principles to justify decisions. You're doing this because I told you so, because there's a standard that says you must do it this way. Versus security principles to guide decisions. We're going to get into tenets in a minute. The idea is you know what you should be doing. If there's a typo in the commandment, you should have the intent and the ownership to go do what you need to do. Enablement. It's one thing to give access to security tools, but it's another thing to make sure that those actions are followed as they're supposed to. And again, having the tools available is not enough, but making security tooling easy to use is the important thing. You want to make the default the most secure path, right? You want to make it difficult for people to do the hard things and make it very easy for people to do the right thing. We talked about this a little bit earlier. Do you want all the security education in just the security team, or you want it throughout the whole organization? We want to make sure we're all speaking the same language, so security professional, development professional, business professional all understand each other when they're talking about risk and security. Then we want to eliminate a few things. Hey, I'm a developer on a HR app. Security is not my job. You hired me to write code. Nope, it's your job to make sure that that's the most secure thing that's out there, right? Us versus them. Security stopped me from doing this. They're such a pain in the ass. No. I should have thought a little bit better about the code I wrote, right? Because it's our job, everyone's job, to make sure things are as secure as possible. So those are those 4 pillars from the culture perspective. Oops. Fun with PowerPoint. So as you sort of move forward with this, you have to be very clear with your language, and that's kind of set up this next thing. At Amazon, I'm sure a lot of you have been exposed to our culture of innovation talk and how, with the exception of things like this where we're using PowerPoint, We use the written word internally to get our points across. So you have to be very precise in the security language that you use, and especially when speaking with people outside of the security realm. We want to talk about security with positive language. We want to do versus we have to do, right? Those are two very distinct tones that you can take within your organization. The idea is that security should be coaches versus cops. And the idea is, we don't use weasel words at Amazon. We try to be very specific. If you see one of these words in a document at Amazon, it gets that nice red pen through it, says you're not being specific enough, right? I want hard data on why we need to do things. And most people, reasonable people, when they see the hard data, they understand, yes, this is the best practices and what we need to follow. Some other examples of language. You understand the difference? We're moving from sort of victim language or blaming language to ownership language, right? So as we move out of culture, we move into organization. And again, the idea of the organization is you want to organize for agility and not control, but that control from a security perspective should be as far down and as close to the problem as possible. And why is that? Well, organizations are moving very, very quickly to software for everything. They're building software like crazy. They're hiring product teams. There's a point where there's a lot more product teams than there are security teams, right? And that can end with less than desirable outcomes. So what we need to do is leverage the amount of bodies that we have throughout the organization and put ownership within the product teams themselves. So you still have that core security organization that lives and breathes security every day. They can explain risk all day long. They know the latest attack types and everything like that that's out there. But they don't know the apps necessarily as well as the developers do, right? So we need to put that security mindset and that ownership into those development teams. And the way we do that is from an ownership perspective, and then we have an organization perspective in just a minute. So when we think about a security-driven organization, again, we're talking about the outcomes of making something secure or making something compliant, and not just random activity of, well, we ran, we patched everything, so we should be good, right? Well, no, we need to look at some of the configurations of other aspects of your application. But the bottom part there is the most important. You build it, you run it. And that's just not from an availability or resilience perspective, that's from a security perspective as well. At AWS, if there's a problem with an application and one of our automated systems goes off, the person in the product team is the one who's paged. It's not the security team. The person in the product team can reach out to the security team for assistance, and they're always available, but it's the product team's responsibility to fix it. Here's an example of what that kind of looks like. And I'm not going to steal her thunder, but if you are here tomorrow, I believe at 10 a.m. tomorrow, Abby Fuller is going to give a talk about AWS's response to the Log4j, Log4Shell. If you're around, I encourage you to attend that. However, I'll just give you the Cliff Notes version here. Log4j, I'm sure we all enjoyed going through that this time last year, or just about this time last year. But what's very interesting in that whole process at AWS was the security team, for the most part, was an observe and report organization. Hey boss, here's the status. We've got X% patched, this system is running fine, this one still needs to go a little further, right? While the product teams, the engineers closest to who actually own their product, who as part of excellent engineering knows all the libraries that they were running and using at the time, they were the ones patching the systems. They were the ones hunting down the libraries and say, oh, we actually don't use the vulnerable one, we're good. That's pretty cool. And that's where the most progressive security organizations are moving to. We have a security guardians program, because again, we're back to let's get security into as many of the teams as possible. Other customers refer to this as security ambassadors, security champions, but the idea is the same. You embed security responsibility in the product team. They have a direct tie back to the central security team. So there may be a special access wiki, there may be code repositories they have access to, they're on regular Slack channels. They know what's going on in the security world, and then they can frame it to the rest of their team for their specific product, right? So there you have that connection. They're up in that nice office with the windows while the security team is still down in the basement, right? But you have expanded your team exponentially to really help secure the overall organization. And I guess show of hands, does anybody have something similar to that in their organization today? Fantastic. Does it work well? Awesome. So again, here's an example of what the larger Security Guardians program works at AWS. Very similar to other organizations that have either a champion or ambassador model in place. Now we want to move on to mechanisms, right? So as Jeff says here, good intentions never work. You need good mechanisms to make anything happen, right? We know people want to do the right thing, but you have to have some sort of process to make sure that they will do the right thing, whether they're thinking about it or not. And just sort of a refresher for you, a mechanism is something you have your known inputs, you know what your desired outcome or outputs are to be, and you have to develop that tool or process or whatever it may be and iterate accordingly to achieve the outcome that you're looking for. And I'm going to go over 3 examples of mechanisms today. There could be many more based on your organization, but here's some that continue to stand out to me. Measurement, governance, and tooling. So measurement. You want to make sure you're measuring the right thing. Anybody familiar with Goodhart's Law? Nope, you're about to be. So the fable is the nail factory owner tells her employees, I'm grading you on how many nails you can output in a day. So she comes at the end of the day, and there's millions of nails, and they're this small, and they're useless. But they did exactly what she asked. She goes, that doesn't work. Now I'm going to grade you on the weight of the nails, because I'm going to outthink you right there. I'm going to grade you on the weight of the nails that you produce. So she comes back the next day, and there's one big nail that's equally useless. So when you're thinking about what you're measuring, think about that outcome. Think about what you're really trying to achieve and go to that. We look at this as being watermelon goals, right? So they're green on the outside, it looks right, but red on the inside, it's not really right. An example I like to use here is retention, right? So someone gives you the goal of you want to increase the retention rate of the use of your application. Perfect. I'll get rid of the cancel button. And I'm going to give you an 800 number that goes through 7 levels of hell. And if you pick the right one, there's no one manning the phone that day. You're going to have to call back, right? But what did I do? I achieved the goal. I've increased the retention rate. But the downside of that is I have a horrible customer experience, and there's no more customers wanting to use my product, and all the word gets out there. So maybe you want to think about changing that metric to engagement rate, right? How do I see how well engaged people are using my application versus how many people are trying to cancel it? And we have a runaway slide deck, so I'm going to try to speak in alignment with it here. Oops. I think I hit the wrong button. Sorry, folks. All right. So just to give you an idea of what rethinking that measurement may look like in a security context, right? So if we look at the top one, number of tickets tracked. That sounds pretty good. How many tickets came in from a security perspective? Well, we can count those. We can kind of measure those to some degree. But how if we look a little bit deeper in the staleness of those tickets? Are these tickets actually being responded to and acted upon? That's probably a better measurement. Another one I like to call out, because many people are familiar with it, is RTO, RPO, right? If you work in disaster recovery or business continuity, you're familiar with those terms. Recovery time objective, recovery point objective. We measure in hours, days, minutes, for the most part. How about rehydration rate, right? So I have another colleague of mine. He's the VP of Security Services and Professional Services. I have an interview with him as well. Like and subscribe. Where we talk about rehydration rate, right? So what is that? Well, you have infrastructure as code. You assume you've put in some best practices. Infrastructure as code, security as code, a lot of automation. You have your data in redundant places. What if I could rebuild my environment whenever I wanted to, with literally a click of a mouse or a command line? That'd be pretty cool. That's rehydrating the environment, right? Customers may start off with a yearly goal of that. Here we go again. Start off with a yearly goal of that, maybe twice a year, then once a quarter, then once a month. You start thinking about, well, why are you doing all this BCP DR testing? Well, it's a resilience test, isn't it? Isn't that a business performance test? I'd say yes. So then when you're having that conversation with your board, what happens if we get hit by ransomware? How do you know you caught everything? Well, even if we get hit by ransomware, I can recover the entire environment in 72 hours. How about that? Or 24 hours, or whatever you want to put things into. Pretty cool. And again, it's a business advantage. And I went back again. Apologies here. Governance. We want to govern organizations to move quickly and deploy quickly and deploy lots of features in a secure manner and not restrict them. How do we think about this? First, you want to establish tenets before your policies and procedures. There's a whole list of thou shalls and thou shalt nots that you can come up with any day, but you want to give guiding principles to people so they can operate on their own when you're not available, right? Again, we want to put that decision down to that most junior developer if possible. Here are some examples of some. We will make the secure path the path of least resistance. Mistakes will happen. That's okay. Just don't let the same one happen twice. Those kinds of guiding principles are very helpful. You want to centralize objectives and decentralize implementation. That core security team wants and should own the security objectives for the organization, but they don't need to necessarily get into the weeds of how you actually do it within each individual team. Runaway slide again, just to make sure I got it. Yep. So here's some examples there, right? For example, how you collect audit evidence or what specific audit evidence, you probably don't want to leave up to the product team, right? You need to set a certain amount of goals from the security or compliance team. This is the kind of artifacts we need to get. How you produce them is up to you. And let their ingenuity and ownership go wild with that, right? And how they want to develop that. Operating with transparency. You want to hold regular security business reviews. That's right, I said security business reviews. I didn't say security reviews, right? In addition to that weekly meeting that the CEO and the CISO have, there's also a bi-weekly meeting with the CISO and all the product owners, right? They do sort of a spin the wheel kind of thing, but all of their security metrics are available publicly, it's internal, but publicly to everyone inside of AWS, which means you know the status of all of my services, and I know the status of all of your services, right? So if we're all competitive VPs and I have more green than you do, guess what? You need to up your game and you're going to want to do that. It becomes competitive. Automating bureaucracy. let humans focus on the things that matter and let systems focus on the things that they are good at. Again, the yes-no decisions, the binary kind of things. Make sure your ticketing system is integrated. When we talked about the guard duty example earlier, finding the Bitcoin mining, kicking off the Lambda, right? You could also have that same script or another Lambda function open up a ticket and then close the ticket once the thing is done. So what have you done there? You've also generated audit evidence. No human was involved. So when the auditors want to go look through, ServiceNow or whatever you're using, they can find a ticket and they have everything they need. They don't have to ask a team anything. It's pretty awesome. And of course, our favorite, and I'm sure Werner said it many times today. I didn't get to attend his session. I was with customers. Speaking of which, who's playing tonight? Yeah. Did he say? Oh, no. I was just, he always announces the artist. I've been at reInvent for 9 years, and I keep waiting for him to say Leonard Skinner, and he never does. So it's always the techno, but that's fine. But encrypt everything, right? So you want to protect your keys. You want to protect, secure the access to who has the ability to encrypt and decrypt. And of course, our favorites, least privilege and MFA. And tooling. You want to build it in as early in the process as you can versus our scenario that we talked about earlier where you're bolting it on the Friday night it's supposed to go into production. So some of the sort of tooling and mechanistic options here that we use at Amazon, and we're really going to talk about the correction of errors due to time. But the idea is we have a process called COE, and I'll just walk you through it here. And anytime something happens that we didn't expect to happen, kicks off a COE, right? So we keep asking questions around what happened, what was the impact, all these kinds of things you see up here. But that last part is the most important. Once we understand what happened and how to fix it, how do we put in either a mechanism, a process, or a tool to make sure that it doesn't happen again? Because again, people are human. Humans are going to make mistakes. That's okay. Let's just not make the same one twice. And we make it easy, right? If you're on a product team, you know exactly where to go to work on the COE form. You know what exactly meeting you need to show up to and what security architect or engineers that's going to be there to help you through the process. And at the end of that review cycle, one of your to-dos is something's going in a backlog somewhere and someone's raising their hand to show ownership. We've got 1 minute and 45 seconds and 10 slides. So, execution. Traditional approach, we want to build out our foundation in the cloud. We want to make sure everything is perfect. Security, infrastructure, all the development tools, it has to be perfect. And then we have to look and say, hey, is there some additional governance we need to put in place because maybe this is a regulated tool or a piece of software that we're building. And then we should come up with a use case, don't you think, right, to actually use all this stuff. So that's that old traditional model, ordering your servers, putting the software in, et cetera. And ideally, you get an outcome out of that. However, the new way, and what we're seeing lots of customers do, is the more iterative approach. What's the business use case? Because that's why we're all here, right? Is to develop use cases for the business to be successful. I'm going to ask a couple questions about that use case to see if there's any additional governance that needs to happen. And then, because everything is code, I'm going to knock out the foundation with the security built in, the pipeline built and ready for developers to start pushing code through. And this allows you to move very, very quickly. Logging everything is very, very important. We basically tell customers, if it has a logging function, turn it on and keep those logs forever. But it's expensive, you say. It might be. There's some strategies around that. But the idea is you want to know the state of everything that's happening in your organization at any one time. And if need be, you want to be able to log dive back in the past to prove something happened or didn't happen. Integrating security into all deployment activities, we've covered that. And focusing on the security outcome versus the security tool. You all know we have a breadth and depth of security services that are available for you to use at AWS. If you go to aws.com/security, I believe, you're going to see 25 or 30 security services. I would argue that that is just a subset of the security services that are available to you. Because we have over 220 services, I would make the argument that every single one of our services, perhaps in conjunction with another, has a security outcome to it that you can build if you're thinking that way and not just thinking about a security tool as being a security tool. We've talked about this as well. We want to work backwards from business objectives and then make sure the right security is there for the right business problem. I'll just bounce through these since we're already late, and I apologize. What's the business outcome that you're trying to achieve? Identify those potential risks. If you don't have that core security foundation, you need to build it or leverage the existing one that you have. Are there any incremental security additions that you need beyond that minimum security baseline? Implement them. Validate that this is what you're doing, and then iterate as accordingly you need to do. So those are our guiding principles that we've gone over. As you know, we're here to help. Enterprise Strategy is the team I work for. I'm the type of person you put in front of your board, in front of your C-suite who needs convincing on this type of thing. The rest of my team does the same thing across different facets. We have professional services that can help you implement a lot of these things. And of course, we have a broad partner network of both consultants and software solutions. Cheap plug from the rest of my team who has decided to write a lot of books and make me look like an underachiever. All of these folks are here at reInvent this week. These books are fantastic. Each one of them touch on security in some way, but again, much more in a business lens, right? Because that's why we're all here, to accelerate the business. And then some last resources. Again, our team do a lot of blogs and white papers and videos. Remember to like and subscribe. The last one there, the Enterprise Strategy blog. I have several interviews on there. I talk about reporting cybersecurity to the board, all kinds of things like that, which I hope you'll find interesting. And apologies for taking an extra 3 minutes from you, but I appreciate you joining and hope you have a great rest of your reInvent. Thank you.